What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. We'll break down what's happening with the earnings that just came out that are very important, what the news is saying about the markets, and some very important levels to watch for on Tesla, SPY, and all these other tickers. But before I break into down all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit $500 into the account, you are guaranteed 20 free stocks. If you deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 75 free stocks. This offer ends very, very soon in just 2 days. Anyways, when it comes to SPY, we had a very, very interesting trend. We were expecting SPY to come all the way down to 505. This dropped all the way down to that level during the pre-market. And then this morning, we're seeing an attempt to bounce by SPY because we ended up not losing 505 as our support. And I mentioned this yesterday to you guys. Watch 505. If we lose this, watch 503. We actually held 505, so we did come down. Now we're trying to rebound from we watch this resistance in this 507 to 507.5 area and see how it reacts from here. So I'm going to break down more details about this in just a couple of minutes, but let's first talk about some data. I want to remind everyone that we have the house price index report coming out at 9. I think this will be coming out in just a couple of minutes, so watch and see what this causes. Then we have Barr from the Fed giving a speech at 9:05, and after that, that's when the data becomes more serious. First and foremost, at 10 a.m., watch the Consumer Confidence Report, the Manufacturing Index, and Manufacturing Shipments. And then 10:30 a.m., watch the Dallas Fed Services and Dallas Fed Services Revenues Index. We watch to see what this data causes and how things are looking. And overall, we'll see how things end up either improving or not for these different sectors in the economy. So watch for high volatility at 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll see what this causes for the markets. Market's going to react to this data, so we'll see how it goes. Now for earnings, we had Norwegian Cruise Line, AutoZone, and Lowe's all announcing their earnings. Norwegian Cruise Line missed on Q4 EPS by 6 cents, but despite that, they ended up giving us their guidance, and guidance was actually better than what we were expecting. It says it right over here. EPS of $1.23 for 2024, which is aligned with expectations. And revenue was looking pretty good. So overall, it had good guidance despite missing on earnings. That's why the share price has been up. Lowe's ended up doing something that wasn't that great. It's actually down in the pre-market. It beat on earnings estimates as sales have fallen, but they expect revenue to slide again. So EPS was a beat, revenue was a beat, but guidance was not the strongest, which is why we ended up seeing this essentially drop. And they're anticipating something very similar to happen, so that's why Lowe's is down. Then we have AutoZone, which had decent earnings overall. Net sales are up 4%. Net income has improved quite a bit. EPS was a beat, that improved as well. And overall, I would say the earnings were pretty good for this, so they ended up beating on the majority of metrics. Good growth, good expansion, and solid earnings thus far. So that being said, now let's talk about what's going on with some news before I break down the charts. We did see the S&P 500 and Dow slip a little bit on Monday. We entered some critical support. Now we're seeing some buyers trying to defend, but we'll have to see if we get a rejection or not. Retail earnings keep rolling on with a pair of new reports out on Tuesday. So we'll see what happens. Don't forget, we also have like Macy's later on for the week. And then we also have like Lowe's and a few others. We'll be watching to see what happens with these retail stocks. There's some stock right over here about how the Federal Trade Commission on Monday sued to block a proposed merger between grocery chain Kroger and Albertson, which is very, very anticipated. This is very important, so we'll see how this goes. And they're arguing that the supermarket banners basically don't align with what they're essentially looking for. The scale would reduce competition, result for higher prices for shoppers. So we'll see how that goes. That is just their argument. The CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, basically came out and he's saying that he's not worried about the possible tie-up between Capital One and Discover. The merger announced earlier this month at the value of $35 billion to create the nation's largest credit card lender, which is currently held by JP Morgan. He's saying he's not really worried about it and that competition is good. Bitcoin's also on a tear. It's been running about 10% in 2 days. That's especially after the SEC has approved the long-awaited Bitcoin ETF, which is great news for crypto. So we're seeing a lot of crypto-related stocks on a tear. And now we're going to be breaking down these charts. What do I see moving forward? So SPY is attempting to push. We're about to be testing our 50 EMA. We're watching this 507 area as resistance, 507 to 507.5. We go a little higher towards 508, but then we'll see how it reacts to this zone right here. Do we break above 508.5? If we do break past this, we could try to make a full recovery, or do we push like into the zone and then reject and make our way back down to 505? We watch to see how the reaction is. This is going to depend on a lot of the data that's coming out. So watch for high volatility at 10 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. and we'll see which way SPY goes. For now, my charts show it's going to push a little higher. We could be testing 507 very, very soon to 507.5. And then we'll see what the reaction is depending on the data, but expect a little rebound before we could get another rejection or not, depending on our data. If we reject, watch 505 as support. If we lose that, there's 503.5 coming next. And if we break out, we could try to make a full recovery. So we'll see what the data causes. It's just hard to predict what the data will cause in this case. Technicals do show this is trying to rebound a bit, but then once again, guys, you never know what the data will cause, if it causes reversal or not. So something I just wanted to note for stocks like Tesla, Tesla's looking strong again, approaching the 205 resistance exactly as predicted. And what typically happens when you hit these tops right here is you might get a little rejection here, come back down and start trying to break out. If it breaks 205, watch 207. If that breaks, we're going to be making our way up towards 210, then 212. There's a very, very good chance that Tesla attempts to go up to these higher levels. But we have to wait and see if we get those breaks or not. So let's see if Tesla could try to break 205. Do we reject a little bit and start pushing up higher? We'll watch that very carefully and see how it goes. For a couple more, I just want to mention that Tesla also has support at 202.5 and then 200. Might come down a bit, then break its way back up. And we could continue to push the filler gap at 207 and eventually reach 212 as Tesla's looking bullish. For the QQQ, hold on a second. For the QQQ, I think that this is looking, showing some life right now. It's still testing 438. So this thing was coming down. I thought this would be a little weaker, but it's actually making its way back up, forming a nice double bottom-like formation. If it breaks 438, we could be making our way back up to 439.25, then 440 is resistance levels. If we reject off 438, we're going to be coming back down to this gap fill at 436, eventually 434. So we watch to see which way this goes, and it has been range bound so far, going back and forth and back and forth. So watch to see how the data ends up causing this thing to react. But in my opinion, it looks like it's going to push a little higher towards this high right here. We could see the low 438. I could see it push a little higher. And we'll see if we reject or not once we gap up. So get ready for this. We'll see if the QQQ gets a big bounce or not. It could gap up, consolidate in the 438 and come back down later. We just have to wait and see how well it holds 438 and how it reacts to the data. But expect it to push a little bit more. It might push a little higher, guys. Make its way back up to 438. You guys can see it right here. It's trying to break out. And watch and see if we get a rejection in that range or not. That's going to be very, very important. For Nvda, okay, Nvda right here is, it's just been kind of consolidating up here. And if we end up losing this support right over here around 785, we're going to be watching 782, then 776. I'll be watching these supports very carefully. If you're trying to rebound, make sure you watch resistance around 795, then 800 and 807. Now looking at the trend, we're still range bound right now. We've been going back and forth between 785 and around 795. You can see it's going back and forth and back and forth. So we'll have to see if this ends up breaking down. And if we end up seeing a continuation to the downside, as we have this wick to fill down here. So I'll be watching to see if Nvda gets this rejection. It's looking a little bit weaker than what many would have expected. So it's showing some weakness, unlike the QQQ. And we'll see how well it holds. The 30-minute looks kind of weak. 4-hour as well. So there is a risk of some downside on Nvidia still. It looks kind of weak compared to like the others. So we'll see how that goes. By the way, for Microsoft, I still think there's a risk of more downside. We do have this gap to fill down here. So we'll see how well Microsoft holds up and watch that gap below. There's going to be some potential for it to come down. Might rebound a bit first before it continues lower. Just want to call that out for Microsoft. And finally, we have Aapl stock. So Nvidia has a risk of downside, so make sure you watch 790 and see if we lose that. If we do, then you have 785 and 782. And then finally, we have this right here, at least for Aapl. The inverse head and shoulders has failed. Now we're barely holding 181. If we lose this, watch 180 as key support and 178 below that. Watch resistance at 181.36 and 182.5. Overall, this is looking a little bearish. We're barely holding above 180, so it might just consolidate in this range, but there's going to be a risk of some downside as Apple's looking a little bit weaker. So be very careful, guys. It might rebound a little bit to get back to the 182 area to make its way back down. So just be very careful. The trend is bearish. Apple's not looking as strong. So that being said, thank you all so much for listening. SPY is trying to rebound a little bit, but that does not mean it's going to bounce like crazy. Could try to push a little bit temporarily, and we'll have to see if we reject or not. The reason why I'm not as certain is because I want to see what happens when the data comes out. Sometimes data could pump the markets or not, so just wait and see what the move is at 10 and 10:30 a.m. Market might push a little bit more, and then we'll see if we get this rejection or not. With that being said, thank you all so much for listening. Please have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you and peace out.